Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, I'll talk a lot about what's going on with the signing day, which has just passed, LSU and Tulane's class. Also, we'll talk a lot about the New Orleans Saints and the New Orleans Pelicans. Got a great panel for you tonight. Garland Gillen of Fox 8 Sports and Coach Rick Gaille of SportsNola.com, WHNO TV, and WGSO Radio. I think I got them all.
There you go.
And guys, this was a challenge this week, and I'll say it. Finding guys that cover sports, that cover everything, that literally can talk about high school, can talk about the pros as well, and we got a great panel to do it tonight. Guys, welcome to the show, and thanks so much for being with us.
No doubt. Big week. National Sign Day yesterday. Had a fun time. Went from Jesuit to Baton Rouge and all areas in between. We talked it all, and it was a fun day. Glad it's over, but 2016 right around the corner. So one of the best quarterbacks in the country possibly is right up in Shreveport.
And from what we understand, maybe leaning LSU's way, right?
His brother's a grad assistant at LSU, and Shea Patterson was a verbal commitment to Arizona, and his brother was a grad assistant there. He quits Arizona, goes to LSU. Maybe so.
I'm hearing some whispers that maybe Ole Miss is trying to hire him now, right?
You're right. Yeah. It's all about family.
Yeah, no. Kind of like the Benson thing, all about family.
That's a whole different subject.
I had to go there. Garland, before we get started, tell the folks about Fox 8, everything you guys got going there.
Yeah, National Sign Day last night. We had a big 30-minute show, and it was a great success. And then Sunday, final play, 10:35. Curtis Lofton, New Orleans Saint, will be joining us in studio, so that'll be pretty fun. And wrap up the Pelicans week. We got 2 more games this week. We got the Thunder on Friday night, the Chicago Bulls on Saturday. So it should be a good show. And I wrote the big story today. We're doing a wrap-up of recruiting. Wrote a big 4-minute story today that's going to air on Sunday. Touched everything from Foster Morrow, between Tulane and LSU came down to the wire. Tyron Johnson, the #1 player in the state, going to LSU. So I touched on a lot of subjects in that story. So Sunday night should be good.
Yeah, and always is, always is. Coach, welcome back, and always good to have you on the show. And once again, tell us a little bit about what's going on, obviously, in your jump into the media life now.
Yeah, well, it's a pleasure being with you, Eric. I appreciate you asking me. After having a chance to host your radio show last week, I had a whole lot of fun doing that. That was the first time I hosted a radio show, so we've added that to television hosting with WHNO and Prep.
That resume is getting long.
Yeah, it's been, talk about unbelievable. It shows you what an education will do. It's what we tell the kids on Prep Recruiting Insider.
No doubt.
An education allows you to do what you want to do rather than what somebody will just let you do. And I'm living the educational dream right now. And it's a thrill to be here tonight and with Garland again as well.
Well, if you would, tell the folks a little bit about some of the things you're involved in.
Well, I'm writing for Sports NOLA. In fact, I just started a 2-part series on the last play of the Super Bowl. On Tuesday, I came out with it. It's at SportsNola.com on the strategy behind the last play, what they did to get them in that circumstance, and then tomorrow morning I'll finish up the article on the breakdowns in the play itself. So I'm getting to do a lot of play analysis and strategic analysis and program analysis, organizational analysis as well for Sports NOLA. 3 tailgaters Saturday morning, Prep Recruiting Insider going into our last month. We had our show last night as well. We started early in the morning in St. Charles Parish. We had 2 crews going. We ended up covering 16 schools and 14 different places.
Excellent.
So it was a great day yesterday. It was a whole lot like working.
Yeah.
Left in the dark, came home in the dark.
Beautiful thing.
That's a lot different than I'm used to now.
Now that he's retired, right, guys?
That's right.
Semi-retired.
Who knew?
Yeah. Hey, Coach, I want to start with you when it comes down to signing day and really recruitment. Being a former high school coach, being a former college coach, you've been on both sides of this. How much has it changed? We've got the advent of social media now. I've said before, I never really bought into the star system, especially when I first started in sports radio back in 2002. There wasn't really, the internet wasn't full blown. You weren't getting these services where you had videos on everyone. The internet has obviously exploded now. Now everyone has their own highlight reel. You have an opportunity for folks to really put eyeballs on players where before they were kind of regurgitating what someone else said. But still, it's still kind of shaky on whether I buy into the star system, but I think it's more validated by the information that we're getting now. From a coaching standpoint, and now looking at it from a media member. Talk about how it's kind of evolved since your time on the sidelines in both college and high school.
Right, because 2 of the years I was at Tulane, 82, 83, 84, I was a recruiting coordinator as well. And 1 year we went heavy high school, and the next year junior college. So I found out where all the junior colleges were in the country as well for a year in Wally World. That's a story for another day.
Yeah.
It's changed immensely. To begin with, coaches spend less time on the road. There's more dead periods. Signing day used to be crazy, but when you hear stories back in the day of players being hidden and going out the back door when another coach was coming in the front door, and coaches waiting outside of somebody's house in the car and sleeping in the driveway, those things actually happened back in the day. It used to be, signing day used to be insane, and head coaches had to be all over the place all the time. So you spend much less time on the road, but you have to be much more efficient. Because you're exactly right. There's so much information out there. You got to sort through it and find what is valid and what isn't valid. And that's what data is all about. Just because you have data doesn't mean that it is useful. The star system is flawed beyond belief, and all you have to do is look at the Super Bowl. In this Super Bowl, out of the 22 starters on each side, 24 starters on each side, so it's 48 players. Not a single 5-star player on both teams. Only 4 4-star athletes on each team. All the rest were 3-star, 2-star, or non-rated. Somebody like a Tom Brady would be non-rated. They didn't have the star system way back in that area, and they had a couple of foreign players in there. So it shows me a couple of things. Number one, the star system, you're comparing, in some cases, a 19-year-old to a 17-year-old. And the 19-year-old is going to stand out more, even though the 17-year-old has much more upside. Ooh, the fatal word that gets more coaches fired than anything, potential and upside. So that's a huge factor there, that a lot of 5-stars have reached their potential before they've gotten there. So you build your program with 3-star athletes that are young 3-star athletes that can develop, that are intelligent, that work hard, that are coachable. Some 4-star, just like the Patriots and the Seahawks, basis of their team are 3-star players coming out of high school that have developed. 4-star players, you need some stars. You need some home run hitters. But how many Odell Beckhams will you take on your football team? And I coached against Odell. And he was a very nice player, and you could tell that he was going to be really good. He was nothing compared to what he is in a very short period of time. So to answer the question, it has changed dramatically. It's how you use the information. The fundamentals are still there. The guys who can recruit still recruit because they work on the important things.
Garland, give us your thoughts on this from a media member, and for someone that obviously covers high school football, that's involved in a prep show, that for years now has been dealing with signing day. Talk about the advent of these services, how it's kind of changed now with the internet, from your perspective.
I think the star system, as you say, it's flawed, but it also helps us sell stories. When Leonard Fournette's a 5-star athlete, the #1 player in the country, when we did stories on Leonard Fournette, we could pump him up more because he was the #1 guy. The same thing with Tyron Johnson this year out of Warren Easton. He's a 5-star recruit. Now, the services, you said Odell Beckham Jr., he was a 3-star. I covered him at Newman, did numerous stories on him. It was between LSU and Miami, and that was it. His recruitment was not a huge deal. We knew he had talent. His hands were like this big.
Still incredible.
But he was a 3-star out at Newman. He was not he was a good player. Obviously, LSU wanted him, but he wasn't a 5-star wide receiver like a Malachi Dupree coming out of John Curtis. I like the rating system because it kind of, you can gauge signing day. You can kind of figure out who had the best talent possibly. Now, the strange thing is there's so many services. Do you go 24/7 Sports? Do you go with Scout? Do you go with Rivals? Do you go with ESPN? We in television usually go whoever has the highest rating because it sounds better on the air.
Sure.
You know, you put a Dante Jackson from Riverdale. He was a 5-star in one service. That's the one I usually like to use because you like to say he's a 5-star athlete. So it's fun to talk about how many stars these kids have and what chance they have at the next level. I will say this. two examples of how a 5-star can be a flawed system and can be good. Leonard Fournette was a 5-star, and he's going to be playing in the NFL.
Yeah.
He was a man among boys, and he was a 5-star. On the other side, Anthony Freak Johnson, Perry Walker, was a 5-star. When we shot games of his, he was playing against Orleans Parish Public School teams that were much tinier than him. He was throwing kids that were like my height and weight, throwing them all over the field. And it wasn't a good gauge of how good he was, because you really didn't know, because the talent was not that good. So when the recruiting experts are out there watching this kid, they're like, oh, he's a 5-star. Look at him destroy this talent. The talent was just not there. So it has its ups and downs, because I've seen it with Freak Johnson and I've seen it with Leonard Fournette.
It's like the gold sheet for entertainment purposes only.
Yes. No, it is. Well, but it's evolved.
It's fun.
It is huge now. I mean, think about it. We've opened up this show talking about signing day.
Right.
And these are 18, 17, 18, 19-year-old kids. And again, you've got fan bases that are on the edge of their seat saying, please, let's hope this player comes to us. And if they don't stay in state or they don't come to our school, well, heck with them. We don't. That's a bad thing. But it has kind of changed as well. Kids are different now. I talk about it on my radio show. Where a kid may have grown up, died in the wool LSU guy or died in the wool Tulane guy. The family's been supporting that program since they were a toddler. Now, kids want to get out. They don't necessarily want to go to the state school. They want to go to the West Coast where they've never been and play there. They want to go up north where maybe there's some snow. Maybe they want to get out of their state and go to another state. So it has evolved there as well.
Yeah, Kirk Merritt's going to Oregon, and that's the second year in a row that a kid from this area is going to Oregon, because Matrell McGraw, who is a DB at John Curtis, he's at Oregon. To think that 2 Oregon kids from in New Orleans area, and then look at Stanford, got 2 kids from this area. Justin Reed out of Dutchtown, which is Eric Reed's brother, now plays for the Niners, and then they got Jay Tyler, quarterback at Newman, who is going to play receiver at the next level. That's impressive that Stanford come in and grab 2 kids, that Oregon gets kids. You will say that LSU, the main reason they did well this year was they closed the borders down. The big name did not get out of state this year. I know Daylon Charlotte was a big deal out of Patterson, but LSU already had a good amount of receivers. They signed 4 of them, so they're fine at receiver. But LSU, I think, did a fantastic job with the guys that they got and they signed. But it's harder now because people want to go out of state. Alabama raided North Louisiana last year.
They did. Coach, as an educator, as a former high school coach, have you seen that now? Kids want to get out of state. It's different than, I grew up an LSU fan and I'm going to be a Tiger no matter what.
Absolutely, and that's a positive. The world has become open to them. Borders don't mean that much anymore. Rivalries don't mean that much anymore. I mean, who would have thought in our lifetime that Texas wouldn't be playing Texas A&M anymore? And look, just the rivalries that have fallen by the wayside over time and have changed. Your borders don't mean that much anymore. The whole world is available to them, and they're more conscious of what's going on in the world. Something about the recruiting process, though, that I think we've got to be careful with in the future, and it's the ascension of what I call the street agent. There are so many people, and that's something about these services that I find distasteful at times, is that there's so many people profiting from the kids that are using the kids for their own uses. The shoe companies, it started in basketball, and that is a scandal waiting to happen.
AAU has destroyed college basketball.
Holy gee. And Sonny Vaccaro has created a monster with the whole shoe contract business. Schools have got to take over the recruiting process because, kids, there is nobody in the world that can do for you what your school can do for you in the recruiting process, because who do the schools have to go to find out if you're even eligible? They got to go to your school and to your coaches and to your teachers. And Bebe Ogeron is a great recruiter because he knows everybody in a school. When he identifies a recruit, he knows everybody in that school, and he knows the kid's character and whether that school wants him or not.
Great segue. Coach Ogeron, Coach Steele come on late. LSU, a lot of talk that they would maybe be a top 20 class. So a lot of them have it rated in the top 10. How much of an impact do you think they made?
Well, they got Arden Key, which was a big deal, defensive end, but they didn't get CeCe Jefferson, which is what they wanted. I think it was too late in the game for them to make major impact this year. I think next year, watch LSU. If they can get Shea Patterson and Felipe Franks to both play quarterback at LSU next year, they are going to have a possible #1 class in the country. If they can lock in. 24/7 Sports has both of them in the top 50 in the country. To have 2 quarterbacks in the top 50 is pretty good. And LSU, they're going to have to fight off Ole Miss for that, because I know Willie Allen out of John Curtis. I don't know if Rick Gaille's seen him play yet, but he is a beast. He's 6'7", 330, offensive lineman at John Curtis. They both visited last weekend at Ole Miss, so they'll have some fights. It's tougher for LSU now that Mississippi State and Ole Miss are both good, and they're right around the corner.
Coach, your thoughts on the addition of Coach Steele and Coach Ogeron?
Can we put this to bed that Les Miles doesn't know what he's doing? Because 2 visits ago on this show, they can't find a coordinator, and Ed Ogeron will never go there, and the recruiting is falling apart, and nobody wants to go. Well, guess what? They did pretty darn good. Steele is a solid defensive coordinator. He's going to do a terrific job there. Getting Babay there is a coup not only for LSU, but for Babay. It gives him a chance, in a sense, to rehabilitate his career, to get things back in order, to do what he's really strong at. It's getting down in the dirt with his athletes, coaching his position, going out and recruiting players. So they did a great job getting 2 coaches to fill those positions. So on the defensive coaching side, they're in very, very good shape there. And they did a great job closing the deal at the end. So folks, they have a better idea of what they're doing than even I or anybody outside fans or anybody else does. But they do a good job.
One real question, when you look at this class, we're going to talk about this class in a moment, not getting a top quarterback to come to LSU and rolling the dice now on Anthony Jennings and Brandon Harris going into the next season. Yeah,
Les Miles said yesterday, Justin McMillan, he's a 3-star recruit. He's already enrolled at LSU. He's not the future, at least he's not going to be on the field right now. You're riding with Anthony Jennings and Brandon Harris for the next 2 years, because, like I've already said a few times, where Shea Patterson and Felipe Franks, even if they come in next year, I don't think they'll be ready to take over. So you're riding with those 2 guys, and you have a wealth of talent at running back. You picked up 2 yesterday in Brissett and Darius Geis. You have receivers. You picked up some great offensive linemen. Everything is out there for the LSU offense at the line, receivers, tight end, running backs. You have 1 spot on the field to fill, and it's still a big question mark.
And the most important spot on the field to fill as well. Coach, your thoughts?
Yeah, they're 1 position away from winning a national championship, contending for it. Here's a conspiracy theorist. They know something we don't. There's going to be more. There's going to be more. There may be. No, I'm not going to say there is. All right.
Possible transfer.
Yeah. Very well could. And it would be good for LSU. I mean, we don't know who Cam Cameron approved or didn't approve as a quarterback recruit either. He may, and he, once again, not bringing in, if they don't bring in another quarterback, this is going to be an indictment on Cameron again. Can he coach the position or not?
Agreed.
Because with all of those other things around, trust me, I could teach a quarterback how to get the ball to the right guy with the people.
Coach, we might send you up to Baton Rouge.
We're going to put the wing tee in like 1958. We're putting all those running backs in the game.
Yeah, you may need to. 866-3200 to Metairie and Hunter. Hunter, welcome. You're on Inside New Orleans.
I see you guys. I see you on my magic TV out there. I do want to say a few things. First of all, I love South Louisiana. I have since I was a boy, and my mom and dad were raised in New Orleans. I was raised in Shreveport and watched Bradshaw and Joe Ferguson when they were in high school. Now, I tell you guys this because you know as well as I do that generally speaking, New Orleans is Spanish and French Catholic, and up there it's Baptist and Anglo-Saxon. And the 2 sides don't always get along. I would like to interject this thought. When we play Alabama and teams from the northern part of these southern states, the kids up there are different from us in many ways. And it's been my observation. And what I'm trying to say is I do think that though they're not ranked in the star system, that Shreveport does year in and year out produce some of the toughest, hardest nosed linebackers, nose guards. Those kids up there are tough. That Williams, I forget his first name, but he's with the Buffalo Bills now. He was with LSU. I was at Tuscaloosa in 2005 when this was Les Miles' first year. Bama was undefeated going in that day. LSU had 1 defeat, and a year or 2 before had won the national title against Oklahoma. That stadium was loud. They were just finishing the construction of that Alabama stadium that year. Bama was ranked number 2 in the country, and LSU went in there, and Williams, that Ruston kid, led the block on 4th and goal. LSU could not get Justin Vincent in that end zone. And Williams got in as a defensive nose guard and blocked for Justin and pushed that Alabama line back on 4th and goal to get that score, and that made it 10-7. LSU won with Jamarcus Russell and Dwayne Bowe in overtime to beat him 16-13. And that's one of the greatest athletic experiences of my life. I just was driving at this idea. I think that we should look a little more closely at that Northwest Louisiana pocket for that particular position. Those rednecks up there can hit, and we need linemen. That's why Alabama's been beating it. And I'm going to get off, and I'm sorry for the long-winded ramble.
No.
See you later.
Thank you, Hunter. Thank you for the phone call. That's what Bebe Ogeron was brought in for, right?
Yes.
North Louisiana.
Yes. Yes.
That's going to be his territory.
And Hunter is exactly right. Louisiana leads the nation in a number of NFL players per capita, and a big part of that is the I-20 corridor. I mean, we can include that whole area from Shreveport to Monroe. And what most of us down here don't realize is how big of an area there is between I-20 and the Arkansas state line when you're looking at the Haynesvilles of the world and the like in those areas. So there's a lot of good players in that area. In fact, I think that Shreveport may in fact lead the state in the number of NFL players per capita from their area. So it's a talent-rich area.
You know from experience, huh, Coach?
Yes, indeed. We went up there many, many times, sometimes successful, but yeah, we played against the Evangelists so many times, I still send some of their kids Christmas cards. It's unbelievable.
Guys, let's talk about the class. Let's start with the LSU class. Garland, I'll start with you. Your thoughts?
I thought they did a solid job. Obviously, they did not get a linebacker. They tried to get Leo Lewis last minute, went Mississippi State instead of LSU after he decommitted from Ole Miss. But got the wide receivers. They got 2 monster running backs, and Darius Geis and Nick Brissett, to go along with Darrell Williams and Leonard Fournette that are already there. So you got 4 running backs. They're all going to get a lot of work. Offensive line, Coach Grimes did a great job. You got 5 offensive linemen, 2 from the state of Texas, the 2 best ones in the state, number 1 and 2. That's impressive to go into Texas with what Charlie Strong is pulling off right now and Coach Sumlin's pulling off at A&M. To go into Texas and grab 2 of them. Doesn't hurt that one of them, his brother's already played at LSU, but they did a great job getting those linemen, receivers, tight ends. Foster Morrow out of New Orleans Jesuit. I've watched many of his games, makes one-handed catches. Not as good as Odell Beckham Jr., but he makes some good catches. I'm not going to say he's going to play this year, but down the line he could definitely do some damage. On defense, I love Dante Jackson because he can play anywhere on the field. Plays wide receiver, plays cornerback, plays punt returns. Coach Miles said yesterday that he's going to try possibly playing him on both sides of the ball. Speedster, 100 and 200 meter dash champion. Riverdale got a great one right there, and I definitely like what he's got. And I guess you could say DBU is going to be safe and sound with Kevin Tolliver out of Florida, the number 1 defensive back in the country, already early enrolled. Dante Jackson and Xavier Lewis out of East St. John. They were on our show last night on the National Sign Day show, and all they talked about was DBU, and that's the reason they go to LSU is because Patrick Peterson, Morris Claiborne, Tyrann Mathieu, some great defensive backs that have been at LSU that have made it big in the pros, and that's the same reason that Tyron Johnson, Derek Dillon out of Pine flipped from Florida to LSU is because they see what Jarvis Landry, Odell Beckham Jr., Brandon LaFell, and Ruben Randall are doing in the NFL.
Coach, you've done a prep recruiting show all year long. Your thoughts on the LSU class?
Yeah, very, very solid. Everybody's happy with their recruiting class. Everybody in the country, that's what's good about the day after. Everybody's happy with what they're doing. Whenever you get 330-pound linemen that you can't pronounce their names, you've had you've gotten a couple good linemen.
I'm not touching it.
and I knew that when I was at Tulane, because we would recruit the Palomar area of California, and if you found a Polynesian kid that was over 6 foot tall, you went ahead and recruited him at that particular time because the loyalty and the work ethic and the intelligence, the value of education, the toughness, the competitiveness is just remarkable. And it's not just for that kid. That attitude becomes infectious throughout the team. So when you get kickers from Australia, you can afford to recruit a long snapper, a pure long snapper that even in high school didn't play another position. That is invaluable. Now you got a guy for 4 years that is going to take care of that. That lets coaches get a chance to sleep at night when they can complete the snap. Just ask Tulane from this past year.
No doubt.
How tragic that was. So they did a good job. Kids want to go there because they can get to the league, and LSU shows that over and over again. Once again, even at running back, where they got more running backs than they can play in a game, and all of those things. So they solved a lot of their offensive line positions. Got kids that can play and what they want to do. Even more skill on the outside, because remember, a year ago, big question marks at the receiving position. Now they're very solid there. They're all in line for national championship and playoff runs over the next several years. One position.
Yep, quarterback. At LSU, it's a 2 to 3 year process. You've got to be in a situation where you realize where at Tulane you may be able to keep a guy 4 years.
Yes.
At LSU, the most you're going to get out of a kid is 3 years. So you got to be continuing to reload that roster, knowing that again, 3 years is about what you're going to get out of some of these top prospects.
Yeah, even defensive back, Jalen Collins is rumored, or not rumored, some of the mock drafts have him going in the first round.
Which is amazing.
He didn't even start at LSU. He started, then lost his
Yes.
job, but he's 6'2".
Yeah.
And that's what it's all about. If you can get DBs that are 6'1", 6'2", they will draft him in the league. That one amazes me. Lyle Collins, yes, first rounder, no doubt. Jalen Collins
look good in the black and gold. I would have to say.
Yeah,
I know a lot of people are saying don't go lineman first round, but he would sure look good with a fleur-de-lis on that helmet.
Yes, indeed. Yes. I would agree with that as well. There's no position on the Saints that can't be improved.
Yeah.
So you bet. So this is better than ever, more true than ever. Best player available.
Let's head back to the phone lines. John is in Mid-City. John, welcome. You're on Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, John.
Hi. I would like to make 2 points, please, if I could.
Sure.
Signing date, draft date, and your marriage date. Everybody's all excited. Nobody's a loser.
That's right.
And as time goes on, then we find out the reality of what's going on. You got the right wife, the right pro player, and the right other thing. Number 2, everybody's all excited about LSU's recruiting, correct?
Sure.
Yes, sir.
Okay. They finished 5th in the SEC behind Alabama and Auburn. You want to beat those two teams, you got to out-recruit them. You're not going to finish behind them each year in recruiting and beat. That's what you have to do. So we have to improve our recruiting. Even though everybody's excited, think about that. We finished 5th in the SEC behind Auburn, Alabama, Tennessee, and somebody else. Thank you.
John, thank you for the phone call. Did you finish 5th in the SEC because of the team in its entirety, or because of one position, though? The position that you did not fill in this offseason, at least not up to this point.
If you're in the neighborhood against an opponent in recruiting rankings, then that's good, because you don't know. You know, you go. Who's saying that somebody's first? Who's saying that somebody's first? Let's go back to the thing with data. There's tons and tons of data. It's all in how you decipher it, and all in how you use it. And when you realize that you win championships, you hope the best players cancel each other out. That you have enough great players to cancel out the other guys' great players. You win with positions 5 through 22. If your 5th player through your 22nd player is superior to your opponents and your stars cancel each other out, you win the game. And so just like in the Super Bowl, your 3-star players right now, if they're the right age and have some development potential ahead of them, that's how you win. Once again, I don't think much about the star system, but it does give us a wonderful vehicle to compare and talk about players. It's a great vehicle for that. But who's first in the SEC, who's 5th in the SEC, who's 8th overall, we'll find out when we play.
Let's talk about the Tulane class. And Garland, I'll start with you. As I've mentioned, you look at this class, not a lot of big stars jump out at you, but it looks like a solid class.
Yeah, and they got some girth. They got some big guys.
They did.
And CJ talked about that yesterday, was that the Cincinnatis of the world were beating them up, and they need to get bigger. And when you get a guy like Leeward Brown out of Miami, who decommitted from Miami and went to Tulane, which that's a pretty strong statement that he would leave Miami to go to LSU, to go to Tulane. 6'3", 340 pounds. that's a hoss. That's a big guy, and they got some good running backs at Tulane, so maybe they can open some bigger holes and protect Tanner Lee.
Yes.
Tanner Lee was on his back a little too much this year. He needs a little more help at the offensive line. So I think overall they did well. They missed out on Morrow at the very end, and 17. Maybe there's somebody still out there. Maybe there is actually still out there. Hunter Dale and John Curtis hadn't made his decision yet because he wants to play baseball and football. He's really good in baseball, and I guarantee that Tulane will give him that opportunity to play both at Tulane. So I think that Tulane might have the upper hand on Hunter Dale, but he's going to wait a little longer on that.
Coach, you made a comment I thought was a great comment earlier in our show, talking about going out there and recruiting 3-star athletes. That's what Tulane did.
Yes, and that's what they have to do. They have to look at kids that are going to be there 4 and 5 years. They need to be in the player development business. There's player procurement and there's player development. And LSU is recruiting a different player than Tulane is right now. That's just the fact of the matter. That LSU is recruiting guys that have got to develop quickly, because if you do right, they're only going to be there 3 years. Tulane needs guys that are going to be there 4 years, 5 years, do a great job, a world-class job in my mind, of developing players physically, mentally, morally, intellectually, and the like, so that this is only a little bit of a joke. When a player leaves Tulane, he should have the opportunity to play in the NFL and be his own agent.
There you go.
That's what they need to do.
Right. That's how they should sell the program.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with going to Tulane with the idea of eventually playing in the NFL. Stanford's done a pretty good job of that, haven't they?
Yes.
And Duke has caught on to it as well.
You know, guys, when you look at where Tulane is right now, obviously CJ has done a nice job in getting local players that have never looked at that university before, but it's still an arms race. You know, you've got ULL, you've got Southeastern, you've got other state schools now that have pretty good programs, and they're going after the same type of athletes that LSU's going after in some cases, but in most cases they're vying with Tulane for their recruits. Your thoughts?
Yeah. What a great state we live in. I mean, when you look at the number of high schools that have terrific football programs and a great coaching at the high school level, and that carries over into the collegiate level now as well. Southeastern's become a national championship contender at the FCS level. I think it's still FCS in the alphabet soup of college football. And Tim Rebo at Nicholls State is going to do an outstanding job, and he really did a terrific job in his first recruiting class, hitting that on the run. McNeese, year after year, doing a great job, as well as Northwest and ULL and UL Monroe. And Louisiana College is one that we don't hear a whole lot about in this area, but Dennis Dunn, who I know only too well from when he was at Evangel, is the head coach there, and they're a Division III contender year after year, and he's signed 3 or 4 kids in this area. So what a great state that we live in, and here's what all of this means. If you're a player here in Louisiana and you have the grades and you love the game of football, there's a place for you to play. It doesn't always have to be LSU and the SEC, and that's honorable and that's admirable. There's a place for any kid in this state that wants to play football if academically you have things in order.
Garland, talk about the fact that, again, we've got a plethora of great universities that are playing pretty good football, but also you've also got obviously schools from out of state that are trying to come in and grab these players as well. So for Tulane, it's not only fighting the LSUs, not only fighting the ULLs and the Southeasterns, it's fighting the Ole Misses, it's fighting the teams within their own conference. It's a tough gig to be able to keep these kids here. But CJ, he's been giving them the message. You can see the change, especially on the field in terms of speed that Tulane has now that didn't have in the past.
Yeah, and they're going to play like an NFL team, he said yesterday. They're going to play rookies. He's selling these kids that come from McDonough 35 and Warren Easton and John Ehret that you're going to play right away at Tulane. And that's what kids want to hear. That's all they really want to hear is they want to play right away. It's a big thing for kids to be out there and say, I started as a freshman or I got playing time as a freshman. And it's a smart strategy for CJ. I'm just glad that Tulane is recruiting locally again.
Yes, me too.
After Cell Phone Toledo going all over the country to grab these kids, kind of lock in the metro area. Yes, you're going to lose some kids at UL, you're going to lose some kids at LSU, but he did a fantastic job of keeping a lot of kids in the New Orleans area at Tulane. I really think that CJ, they won 3 this year. I don't think they're going to make a bowl game next year because they play Georgia Tech, Duke, and Army in their non-conference. And I think that American Athletic Conference, it's not a great conference, but it's got some good football. They'll probably go 5-7 next year. I think it's the year after that when a lot of these freshmen that played this year are going to be juniors,
Yes.
especially Tanner Lee. Tanner Lee's going to drop that interception ratio down. I think their junior year is when they contend for an American Athletic Conference championship. I think they got big things going forward. And they got the kicker situation. They got another guy, though his last name is Block. I don't like a last name for a kicker whose name Block.
But you could go nowhere but up.
Yeah.
Nowhere but up. That's for sure.
Special teams, field goals, punting was a disaster this year,
it
to
definitely
put it
was.
mildly.
You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports each and every Thursday night right here on WLAE at 6 p.m. with our live broadcast. Each and every Friday night at 10 p.m. here on WLAE. And now at a new time on Pelican Sports Television in the New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Lafayette markets, Friday nights at 9 p.m. Our guest tonight, Garland Gillen of Fox 8 Sports, Coach Rick Gaille of WGSO Radio and SportsNola.com. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Don't go anywhere. We'll shift gears now. We'll talk a little bit about the Pelicans. We'll talk about the Saints. We'll talk about the Benson Saga, and, of course, your phone calls at 866-3200. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by
Located on Lake Pontchartrain, Brisbee's Lakefront Restaurant and Bar offers traditional West End favorites, a scenic view, oysters, and numerous tasty options. More information is available at 504-304-4125 or brisbeesrestaurant.com. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile. You're watching WLAE, New Orleans Public Television. Find us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. 866-3200 is the phone number to get involved. Saints, Pelicans, signing day, all on tap if you've got questions or comments for our panel. Garland Gillen of Fox 8 Sports and Coach Rick Gaille of WGSO Radio. Guys, tough loss for the Pelicans last night. On Friday night, if you're going to watch the rebroadcast of the show, they'll take on the Oklahoma City Thunder. Rare back-to-back, but here's the one. You needed to get the one at home because it's really tough to win in OKC. And I was mentioning you guys in the break, and I mentioned on the radio show yesterday, and I reiterated it today. A lot of people are excited about Tyreke Evans. I am excited about Tyreke Evans as well. I love the way this team is sharing the basketball. There's no doubt. It's been a different mindset since that East Coast road swing in which they were embarrassed losing to Boston, Philly, and the New York Knicks. Players only meeting from we understood after the Knicks game. They came together, started to talk about what they need to do to win. Quincy Pondexter has been a real big influence on this team. You can see it already, kind of taking a leadership role. But my gosh, Russell Westbrook is an all-star. And you cannot discount what Drew Holiday means to this team from a defensive standpoint in his ability to be able to take on the top guards in the NBA. And they sorely missed him last night. Garland, I'll start with you. This is still a big stretch for the Pels. You've got Oklahoma City breathing down your back. You're trying to catch Phoenix at this point. And you put yourself in a little bit of a hole early, losing to teams you should have not lost to. We've only got a couple weeks till the All-Star break. But again, this is where you still have to continue to gain ground, trying to get to that mythical halfway point with an opportunity to get into the playoffs. I've said on my radio show, I'm not saying the P word yet, because they haven't proved to me they're a playoff team, but you got to like the way they've been playing, with the exception of last night. Last 5 minutes, Anthony Davis doesn't touch the basketball. It really was a kind of a reversion back to what we saw when they were struggling.
how do you go 5.5 minutes without scoring a basket
It's
or a
amazing.
point? Like, not even a free throw, anything.
Right.
I was blown away they couldn't put up a point in the last 5.5 minutes. They're still a game and a half back of the Phoenix Suns, but they're only a game ahead of the Thunder. When the Thunder finally got Kevin Durant back and Russell Westbrook, I read was healthy, I thought the Thunder were probably going to get that 8th seed. But it's taken a little while to get up there. But now they're breathing down the Pelicans' neck. They play again tomorrow night, as you said, in OKC. I think they're probably going to win again. Without Drew Holiday, who's going to stop Russell Westbrook? We talked about it before. Tyreek Evans is a great point guard, but you need defense. And Drew Holiday and Anthony Davis are your two best defenders on the floor when you have a healthy starting lineup. And they need Drew Holiday last night. They said 2 to 4 weeks, 2 weeks ago. It's got to be getting close right now for him. I love that the All-Star break is now, I don't know if people realize, it's a week and a half long now. That is a lot of time for Drew Holiday to heal, because they got the Bulls on Saturday night. The next week, they got the Jazz on Monday, the Pacers on Wednesday, and then they go on break. They could win those last 2 games. If they can split between the Bulls and the Thunder, I don't say it's that bad, because I think it's going to be tough tomorrow night, but they play lights out at home usually. They didn't last night. I thought they were going to beat the Thunder, so it was a tough one for them to lose, especially with Westbrook tying a career high at 45 points.
Unstoppable. Unstoppable to the hole. Just unstoppable.
Yeah, but they didn't stop the rest of the guys either.
Right, true.
Westbrook could get 45, but guess what? That wasn't half their points, was it? When you get right down to it. When I knew we were going to talk about the Pelicans, I did some research this morning, because I coach basketball.
Yes.
That was one of the values of starting out as a freshman coach. I coached every sport there was, and John Wooden was one of the coaches that I collected stuff. In fact, heard him speak at a Louisiana Association of Educators meeting during the Thanksgiving week when I was a younger coach. And I was trying to quantify what is playing the game the right way, because the Pelicans have shown when they play the game the right way, they can compete with anybody in the league. So it's not a talent thing, it's a play, how do you play kind of thing. And it comes down to aggressive players who are well grounded in the fundamentals and that play well together. But the word aggressive kept coming out. You can only be aggressive if you're positive in what you're doing, confident in what you're doing, know what you're doing, and you're willing to share the ball, as you mentioned, with each other. When you watch the Pelicans play out of 48 minutes, you could see 43 minutes. Boy, they're doing that.
Yes,
I mean, they're playing
agreed.
defense. They get down on the floor. They're rebounding. They're fundamentally sound. And then all of a sudden, for whatever reason, they're doing none of it. I mean, they got 5 guys standing around waiting. Okay, well, who's going to do something? And that's a bane in pro basketball, because where is the fundamentals or the system that they have in place that requires players to be active and to have continuous movement and not just standing around thinking that that's floor spacing.
Right.
Because that's an important principle as well. Floor spacing isn't just standing way away from everybody else. It's having continuous movement, attacking the basket, and everybody rebalancing as they're moving. And it's palpable. You could see it. That, wait a second, they're not doing any of the things that they did before. And in my mind, once again, they can compete with anybody and they've proven it if they play the game the right way. And they've got to make the playoffs this year, in my mind, because this administration, even if it costs them something in the draft, all right? Because you see teams over and over fall into the lottery and they still don't get any better, because they just stink as administratively. This administration has got to show that they can produce a winner and to be able to get into the playoffs. But with Phoenix ahead of both Oklahoma City and the Pelicans, it's going to be difficult to catch them, even though it's close.
Yeah, I'm with you, Coach. I'm on the record as saying that, this is the year for both Dell Demps and Monty Williams. I was questioning whether the team was listening to Monty Williams anymore. But yet it seems like they're rallying around their coach. They like their coach. They want to play for their coach. You see it. You don't just all of a sudden flip a switch and start sharing the basketball. You don't have guys that were normally, again, being selfish and worried about getting mine, a.k.a. Tyreek Evans, who now is become that quintessential point guard. You don't have a situation where you've got guys like an Eric Gordon, who all of a sudden now looks like the Eric Gordon who was with the L.A. Clippers and not the Eric Gordon who was with the New Orleans Hornets. That again, playing together. The addition of Dante Cunningham, Quincy Pondexter made a big difference on this team. But guys, I'll say this: I don't think they're a good defensive team. I know Monty Williams is looked at as a defensive coach. I played the game. I watched the game intensely on all levels. This is not a good defensive team, even with a guy like Anthony Davis on the court.
You talk about the administration. If they don't make the playoffs this year, then one or two are going to be gone. You know why? Because you got to send a message. Anthony Davis's contract is what, up after next year.
Yes.
You got to show the Pelicans mean business going forward. So that is going to be a key thing. I'm not saying the Pelicans aren't going to make the playoffs. There's still a lot of time left. I got a buddy at another TV station that proclaimed after the East Coast road trip that I'm not going to say his name on air, but he proclaimed that they were done with. I kind of messed with him about it.
But a lot of people did.
Yeah.
Again, why wouldn't you? I mean, they lose to 3 of the dregs of the NBA on the road.
That's why they're so hard to read. They're it's like the New Orleans Saints, the LSU basketball team, and the Pelicans are impossible to read this year. I have no gauge of when they're going to win or lose. It's just up and down, flip a coin. I really thought they're going to win last night against the Thunder. And tomorrow night, I said they're going to lose.
Right.
They're going to probably win by like 15 tomorrow night.
They could come out and play. Coach?
Yeah, I mean, how could you have possibly predicted, even though on the 3 tailgaters, I did tell Ken Trahan, now watch him go and lose to the Knicks. No, they'll go to beat Toronto.
Right.
And then lose to the Knicks. And Trahan's going, no, there's a, well, guess, that's exactly what happened.
Yes.
That's incredibly frustrating. The consistency of effort, that's inexcusable not to give a great effort all the time. That's inbred.
Especially when your top player is giving effort for 48 minutes. Anthony Davis gives effort every moment he's on that court. That should be infectious.
Professional players, because there's so many people that want their job, professional players are innately competitive and will give you an effort unless you give them a reason to do otherwise.
Let's head to the phone lines. 866-3200. Toby is in Gretna. Toby, thanks for your patience. You're on Inside New Orleans Sports.
Yes, a high school letter of intent. Does it have to be signed? Does it have to be signed until May 1st? And I'll hang up and listen. Thank you.
Thank you, Toby. Guys?
Well, the signing day, even though the first day to sign was today, but you can wait. You still have time, as we talked about Hunter Dale.
Well, CeCe Jefferson hasn't sent his stuff in from Florida yet, right?
It's some of these kids. I mean, they say they signed. I think they're just trying to build some drama. Miles said yesterday, though, he would be all for an early signing period. They do it in the college basketball, and it makes. I mean, I'm sure Ben Simmons enjoys that he's an LSU signee. He can move on now and just focus on his senior year of basketball at Montverde. He's the #1 player in the country, if you don't know who Ben Simmons is, out of high school, and he's going to be at LSU this fall to play basketball for Johnny Jones. But I think it'd be a lot easier on some of these kids to just focus on a signing day and then just move on and focus on your high school football season. But it is stressful for these kids. There's no doubt in my mind. I know we can sit back and we can question, why did this kid do this and that? We don't know the entire situation. And that's why a kid like at Curtis, give him more time. Just pull back. I love Kendall Busty at Newman, but he verbally committed to 4 different schools.
Well, he talked about loving Tennessee his entire childhood.
Now, I will say this about Kendall Busty. I've heard a lot of things talk about him being with 4 schools. The first school was Tulane, that he verbally committed to. Then he went to Nebraska. Nebraska fired his entire coaching staff. That's why he bailed on Nebraska. Then he went to Tennessee. Tennessee went back after he said he verbally committed to him and then said that he was not going to be on scholarship for 2015, possibly a 2016 recruit. Well, he didn't want to hear that. He wanted to play right away. So that's why he decommitted from Tennessee and then finally went A&M. So the business gets bad when you can see a kid verbally committed to 4 different schools.
Yes.
But I am going to give a little leeway to the Kendall Busty because those are 2 different situations there. When you get offered a scholarship, you accept the scholarship, and you say, I'm playing at LSU or you're going to play at Tennessee, and then they say, wait a second, we don't have one for you yet, which happened to Foster Morrow. He verbally committed to LSU on Christmas Eve, and they're like, well, hold on, we don't have a spot for you yet.
They went to gray shirt him, right?
Yeah, well, they were waiting for some spots to open up, and a guy like Leo Lewis, not signing with LSU, helped Foster Morrow get that spot. He didn't know till 9 a.m. yesterday morning that he was going to sign with LSU. You could tell at the signing at Jesuit 12:30, he was still stressed out with the whole situation. It plays with the parents, with the kids. there's sometimes a deal made, and then they back on that deal on both sides. Not just the kids to blame here, the coaching staffs of these teams also.
Well, and I've always been one, whether it's basketball, football, doesn't matter, baseball on the collegiate level. You know, the coach can pick up and leave at any time and head on to greener pastures. But yet, you know, a kid signs with that school, think he's going to play a certain formation, for a certain offense or defense, play for that certain coach. And all of a sudden, that coach is gone, and there's the kid. That's why I've always said, don't sign with the coach, sign with the school. Coach, your thoughts?
Cannot be stated any better than that. The system is seriously flawed. It forces the kids to give an early commitment because they want to make sure they have something in hand, and then they can negotiate. They can deal. In fact, in many cases, they become a hotter property after they commit somewhere.
Yeah.
That they get recruited by more schools and harder. An early signing date is imperative. We have to have it. And it can be in conjunction as a date when junior colleges have completed their season, so that boom, you could sign right then, get that nonsense over with, and it stops this whole charade back and forth of commit, decommit, uncommit, recommit, faux commit, all this other business. And I learned a new color this time. I knew what a red shirt was.
Right.
I knew what a gray shirt was. I've learned what a blue shirt is.
What is a blue shirt?
That's what they wanted Bussy to do.
Correct.
All right. You enroll on your own the first day of school. The second day, they sign you to a scholarship that puts you in the next year's class. Bussy would have been able to play this year under that, but he'd have had to enroll on his own, then the next day signs a scholarship for the next year so that they could maneuver that around. So welcome to the wonderful world of color in college recruiting.
Coach, you're still the educator because I didn't know what a blue shirt was till just now, so thank you for that. Brian is in New Orleans. Brian, thanks for holding. You're on Inside New Orleans Sports.
How you doing?
Hey, Brian.
I'm sorry about that, sir. How you doing today, sir?
Doing fine, sir. Thanks for calling.
I got a question for you, sir. Are they going to sign a quarterback in the draft this year or next season?
With the New Orleans Saints?
Yeah, New Orleans Saints, sir.
Brian, thank you for the phone call, guys. Luke McCown signs a one-year extension today. It looks as though I've thought all along this is going to be Ryan Griffin's backup here. Okay, he's got to be the guy. I don't think this year is the year. Although if there's a prospect there, they got really close last year to drafting the Georgia quarterback. Mm-hmm. They were looking also at Mettenberger as well. If Mettenberger wouldn't have been scooped up when he was, so I wouldn't put it out the realm of possibility. But gosh, this is a team that has so many needs. Your thoughts?
No, if they're going to get a quarterback, it's going to be in the 6th or 7th round or undrafted rookie. Maybe like a Brian Bennett if he drops out. You know, Brian Bennett has a cannon for an arm, throws it 80 yards down the field from southeastern Louisiana. If you can pick up a Brian Bennett in a free agency undrafted, then go for him. But I think you're gonna ride with Luke McCown, with Ryan Griffin and Drew Brees this training camp. And then we were pumped that Ryan Griffin was finally going to get that job last year, and he had a bad preseason run in those games, and that's why he jumped from practice squad to the regular squad. And right now, Luke McCown signed, almost making $1 million as a backup. That's pretty good cash.
Well, that means again, depending on how much of that is guaranteed, we'll see if he's going to be on this roster. Coach, your thoughts?
Right. I think those are extremely good points because it was the second preseason last year, and the bad decision making by RG4 that really put him behind the 8 ball, because I was right there with you, because he was holding for place kicks as well at that particular time.
You pointed that out on this show.
I thought that was an indicator, because McCown the year before in the competition with Seneca Wallace was holding for place kicks. Well, they threw me a curveball there. I could tell you that Drew Brees doesn't want him to draft a quarterback. He wants help. And so you ask any of the elite quarterbacks in the league, there's only about 6 of them. We don't need no stinking quarterback.
We don't want no I want offensive lineman.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. No doubt. Steve is in Metairie. Steve, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports.
Hey guys, how y'all doing tonight?
Great.
My question is, the Madden video game was able to predict the exact score of Seahawks versus New England. And if by some miracle the Saints had made it into the Super Bowl, what are your thoughts on the outcome and the score of Saints versus Seattle and Saints versus New England?
Thanks for the phone call, guys.
Well, it'd be Saints against New England, AFC, NFC.
Yes.
But Tom Brady would have shredded that defense. The Seahawks are the best defense, I think, in the NFL, and 4 touchdown passes. he would have ran circles around that Saints defense. The Saints defense had a lot of trouble. Maybe if they'd have made the playoffs, they'd have beat the Arizona Cardinals, and that was it. They would have gone to Seattle and lost, and that would have been the end of the season for the Saints. They have a lot of problems on defense. I think Dennis Allen coming in will help alleviate some of those problems. With Rob Ryan will figure it out, but they need a cornerback on the other side of Keenan Lewis, and I think they might get that guy in free agency possibly, and we're going to move on from there. But that they would not have been in the big game this year.
Coach.
Yeah, Brady would. I'm not certain that Brady would have shredded the Saints defense because he would have handed it off 50 times instead of throwing it 50 times, just like Cincinnati did and Baltimore did, because they were just physically superior offensive line to defensive. But either way, New England was, as you were stating, a vastly superior team.
Yes.
But yet they're not that far away. I mean, that's the nature of the NFL.
Right.
Oh, yes.
That
It's
one draft, a couple of signees. And even with the lawsuits going on with the Benson family,
right.
the front office is going to be more stable than it was last year, because in world-class competition, any little hiccup trickles down. And nobody knew who to answer to last year, because if one side was going to take over, then they were out of a job. If this side took over,
That's a great point.
So they had a bunch of people walking on eggshells last year, trying not to aggravate one side. Everybody was hanging low.
Right.
So even with the lawsuits, that's part of business. All that business. The front office is going to be much more stable, and that's going to help.
I agree about the focus, and I'll make a prediction. Loomis, Peyton, the scouting staff, the coaching staff will not be in Vegas the week before the draft this year.
That's right.
Okay, that's not going to happen. But it showed how lax they were last
Yes.
year. That they felt like they had a championship team. They needed a couple of pieces. We could kind of mail this in on the draft. There's not going to be anybody that's going to. It reminded me of Bum Phillips back in the day. Because nobody can make this team. Let's go to the track. In this case, again, it just showed that maybe they weren't as focused as they needed to be. And you see guys that were longtime coaches, longtime front office individuals that won this team that have been jettisoned now.
Right.
New voices, I guess a new approach in the locker room, in the front office. So we'll see how that's going to pan out. Do you agree they're pretty close, or do you think they're far away?
Well, they need some of these guys they signed last year. The Stanley Jean Baptiste of the world have got to step up and play this year.
Again, that's like rolling craps at Vegas, because you're picking a second round pick that again can't get on the field.
They can't get any worse. I guess they could get worse, but I think with the injuries of Jarris Bird, with him coming back to 100%, with Brandon Cook, that hurt big time.
Yes,
Brandon Cooks being out, and maybe Lance Moore got released from Pittsburgh. Maybe he comes back in. He did well in that slot position for the New Orleans Saints.
I've heard that from more than one person about Lance Moore.
I mean, Lance Moore, and you got to get him on the cheap, and Robert Meacham, he might be on the outs, so maybe a guy like Lance Moore could come back in. And Jimmy Graham did not have the best season. I'm sure he could admit that. Maybe some of these guys had bad seasons. They can all turn around at the same time. All you need is a little spark. You win a few games here and there, and then all of a sudden you're in first place. Exactly. And as we saw this past year, to win the NFC South, it doesn't take a lot of wins. Maybe 8 will do it, maybe 9.
Well, hopefully, again, there'll be more than 8 or 9 wins.
Right.
Well, there's going to be a revolt on Poydras Street. Right. Gentlemen, thanks so much for being with us tonight here on Inside New Orleans Sports. Garland Gillen of Fox 8 Sports, and Coach Rick Gaille of WGSO Radio, WHNO TV, and also SportsNoel.com. Thanks so much for watching. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this show each and every Friday night at 10 p.m. right here on WLAE TV. And now at a new time on Friday nights on Pelican Sports Television in New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Lafayette. That's 9 p.m. or set the DVR. Don't forget, you can catch me on the radio weekdays 11 a.m. until 1 p.m. on 990 a.m. WGSO. Also on the web at ericasher.com, where you can listen live to the radio show, download my podcast, or you can check out any of the previous episodes of Inside New Orleans Sports as well. Special thanks to our guests, again, Garland Gillen and Rick Gaille. Also to the WLAE production staff, including Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Donovan Joseph, Kenny Juneau, Philip Williamson, Amanda Lyons, and my director, William Hill. For my guest, Garland Gillen and Rick Gaille, my name is Eric Asher. Thanks so much for watching Inside New Orleans Sports. We'll hope to have you right back watching again next Thursday night. Have a great evening. Have a great week. We'll see you again next week. Thanks again.